All right, hold your horses, Brenda," I muttered, trying to juggle a lukewarm coffee, my phone precariously balanced on my shoulder, and the damn dinosaur backpack Leo insisted on bringing everywhere, even though the blue dinosaur bus was literally pulling up outside. "Yes, I see it. Yes, the big blue one. No, Brenda, that's a stegosaurus on the side, not a brontosaurus." Honestly, for someone so invested in neighborhood aesthetics, her grasp of paleontology was lacking, to put it mildly. I squinted through the blinds, my heart doing that familiar, anxious flutter kick against my ribs. It was the first day. After months of assessments, paperwork that could have wallpapered a small apartment, and enough phone calls to make my ears bleed, the mobile therapy unit for Leo was finally here. My 6-year-old, Leo, was bouncing on the balls of his feet next to me, a low, happy hum vibrating in his chest. He didn't understand the bureaucratic battles we'd fought to get this bus to our curb, didn't grasp the significance of the bright blue T-Rex painted on its side. But he knew, somehow, that this was for him. His dinosaur backpack, a constant companion filled with his meticulously ordered collection of plastic figurines, seemed to vibrate in unison with his quiet joy. The bus, bless its brightly colored soul, was a glorious sight in our otherwise beige suburban landscape. It wasn't your average school bus. This was a custom-built mobile therapy center equipped with sensory integration tools, calming visual displays, and the promise of progress for my son. Dr. Anya Sharma, Leo's therapist, stepped out, a serene smile gracing her lips. She exuded the kind of calm I desperately wished I possessed. Leo, usually hesitant with new people, reached for my hand, then, surprisingly, tugged me towards the door. He was excited. He knew. The first session went smoother than I'd dared to hope. Leo, initially shy, was soon exploring the sensory swing and engaging with Dr. Sharma's gentle prompts. Sarah, my wife, stood beside me at the window, her hand gripping mine so tightly my knuckles were probably whiter than Carol's meticulously manicured lawn across the street. We watched, a silent prayer of relief forming between us. This was it. This could be the turning point. The bus rumbled away, leaving a vacuum of quiet on the street. A fragile bubble of hope had formed around our little family. It lasted approximately 7 minutes. As I walked down the driveway to grab the mail, a crisp, cream-colored envelope lay tucked into the gap beside our front door. Not in the mailbox, mind you. That would have been too pedestrian. This was a deliberate act of subtle aggression, the stationary equivalent of a raised pinky finger while sipping poison across the street. I saw her. Carol, our HOA president. She was kneeling by her prize-winning rose bushes, snipping a deadhead with the focused intensity of a surgeon performing open-heart surgery. Her lips were pursed in that familiar, tight line that suggested disapproval of everything within a 5-block radius that wasn't beige. She looked up, saw me holding the envelope, and offered a thin, knowing smile, a little victory smirk playing on her lips. Then, the saccharine wave. The note, printed in a disturbingly elegant font on heavy stock paper, was from the Architectural and Neighborhood Harmony Committee. Harmony. The irony could have choked a horse. It was a friendly reminder. Those words always preceded the least friendly pronouncements regarding Bylaw 17, Section C, Subparagraph 4. No commercial vehicles shall be parked on community streets for a duration exceeding 20 minutes for loading or unloading purposes. My inner monologue went into overdrive. Commercial vehicle? This isn't a damn ice cream truck, Carol. This is vital medical care for my son. Neighborhood harmony? The only harmony she's ever achieved is the perfect shade of beige on her window shutters. I bet her dreams are in Pantone swatches. I showed it to Sarah, who rolled her eyes so hard I was genuinely concerned they might get stuck. Oh, for crying out loud, seriously. Seriously, I confirmed, crumpling the offending missive in my fist. But don't worry, it's a medical vehicle. We have documentation. She can't possibly… The sentence trailed off, a sliver of doubt worming its way in. Carol had a way of weaponizing the most innocuous rules, twisting them into instruments of suburban torture. Still, I'm a project manager. I believe in process. I drafted a polite, professional email to the HOA board explaining the nature of the bus and attaching a letter from Leo's pediatrician outlining his diagnosis and the necessity of the specialized therapy. I was reasonable. I was logical. I used bullet points. I even CC'd Carol just to be transparent. Crickets. A week passed. The blue dinosaur bus became a daily fixture, a splash of vibrant color against the muted tones of Willow Creek Estates. Leo was responding well to the therapy, his humming a little louder, his engagement a little more focused. For a brief, glorious period, it seemed Carol had accepted defeat, or at least found a new beige-related injustice to obsess over. Then the second letter arrived. Certified mail. That alone ratcheted up the anxiety level by a solid 3 notches. This wasn't a friendly reminder. This was a declaration of war, sealed with the official stamp of the Willow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. Inside were more grainy photos of the bus, this time with red circles highlighting the duration it was parked, always between 45 and 50 minutes, the length of Leo's session. The accusations had escalated. Now, in addition to Bylaw 17, they were citing Bylaw 22, vehicular aesthetics. Apparently, the cheerful blue of the T-Rex, a color scientifically proven to be calming for many children with sensory sensitivities, was not in keeping with the community's established color palette. And then there was the pièce de résistance, Bylaw 9, noise and nuisance, complaining about the disruptive hum of the bus's onboard generator, which, I'd like to point out, was quieter than Carol's leaf blower on a Sunday morning. Sarah was pacing the living room, her voice tight with frustration. This woman is actually trying to stop Leo from getting the help he needs because she doesn't like the color of the bus. That seems to be the gist of it, I said, my jaw clenching. She's gone full suburban supervillain. What do we do? Sarah's voice trembled slightly. I looked at the certified letter, the official-looking seal, the thinly veiled threat of fines. A familiar switch flipped in my brain. The project manager took over. What do we do? I do what I do best. I make a new project folder. Label it. Project. Annihilate the HOA witch. I'm going to drown this woman in so much paperwork she'll wish she was back alphabetizing her spice rack. That evening, armed with a highlighter that had seen better days and fueled by lukewarm coffee and righteous fury, I dove into the 300-page HOA covenant. It was a dense, mind-numbing document filled with legalese about acceptable mailbox designs and the precise height of lawn grass. I searched for loopholes, for anything that could give us an edge, but it felt like trying to find a specific grain of sand on a very beige beach. The more I read, the more that knot of dread tightened in my stomach. Carol, damn her rule-obsessed heart, seemed to have all the bases covered. Or so she thought. A few days later, we had a contractor coming over to start building a sensory-friendly play structure in our backyard for Leo. It was another significant investment, another step towards creating a safe and stimulating environment for him. We'd hired Gus, a mountain of a man with a booming laugh and a perpetually dusty baseball cap. His truck, a battered Ford F-250 that had clearly seen more action than the entire Willow Creek Estates neighborhood combined, rumbled down our street. Barely had Gus unloaded the first stack of lumber when, like a beige-clad phantom, Carol materialized. Clipboard in hand, tape measure clipped to her belt, she descended upon Gus with the air of a health inspector finding a rogue germ. "Excuse me, sir," she began, her voice a carefully modulated blend of authority and faux concern. "I don't believe I've seen your vehicle here before. Are you aware of the HOA regulations regarding contractor parking and permitted work hours?" Gus, who was halfway through wrestling a particularly stubborn 2x4, straightened up, wiping a bead of sweat from his brow. He looked at Carol, then at his behemoth of a truck, then back at Carol. "Ma'am, I'm here to do a job. Got a permit from the city and everything." He gestured vaguely towards his dashboard. Carol's eyes narrowed. "While a city permit is necessary, it doesn't supersede the community's covenants. According to Regulation 34B, all construction materials must be neatly stacked and covered with an HOA-approved taupe tarp by 5 p.m. Furthermore, work hours are restricted to 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., Monday through Friday." She consulted her clipboard with a smug little flick of her wrist. Gus looked at his watch, a massive mud-splattered thing that read 10:30 a.m. He scratched his beard, a rumble that sounded suspiciously like distant thunder emanating from his chest. "Lady, if I had a taupe tarp for every crazy HOA rule I've ever heard, I could cover the whole damn state of Texas. Now, if you'll excuse me, I've got a playset to build for a little boy." He turned back to his lumber, effectively dismissing her. Carol, however, was not easily dismissed. She turned her attention to me, her gaze sharp. "Mr. Thompson, you are responsible for ensuring your contractors adhere to community guidelines. I trust this won't be an issue." "You know, Carol," I said, trying to keep the sarcasm from dripping too heavily, "Gus here is actually bringing a bit of much-needed non-beige to the neighborhood. We're quite excited about the textural diversity the play structure will offer." Gus let out a muffled snort of laughter as he wrestled another beam into place. Carol's face tightened. She scribbled something furiously on her clipboard. "I'll be monitoring the situation," she declared, before marching back towards her perfectly manicured fortress across the street. Later that day, while Gus took a lunch break, he and I sat on our porch, commiserating. "HOAs," he said, shaking his head. "They're like vampires, you know? They feed on joy and have to be invited in, by signing a stupid contract when you buy the house." He regaled me with tales of other HOA battles he'd witnessed. The great flagpole debacle of 18, the infamous Pink Flamingo uprising of 21. He became an unlikely ally, a grizzled veteran of the suburban rule wars. Then the nuclear option arrived. Another certified letter, this one thicker, heavier, and bearing the imposing letterhead of a law firm. Stern, and Bottomley, attorneys at law. The cease and desist order regarding the ongoing commercial vehicle nuisance was even more formal, more threatening. Daily fines of $200, retroactive to the first violation. And the chilling promise of a lien on our house if the issue wasn't immediately resolved. Sarah read it, her face paling. Tears welled in her eyes. "Alex, we can't afford this. What are we going to do?" I felt a wave of crushing defeat wash over me. I'd tried to be reasonable, to follow the process. I'd failed to protect my son. The project manager in me felt incompetent. That night's sleep was a distant dream. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, the weight of the legal threat pressing down on me. It was then, in the suffocating silence of 3 a.m., that a crucial realization dawned. My project manager approach, my reliance on logic and documentation within the HOA's framework, wasn't working. I couldn't fight this battle on their beige battlefield. I needed to find a bigger playing field, a set of rules that trumped their petty bylaws. I stumbled out of bed, my eyes gritty with exhaustion, and fired up my laptop. This time, I wasn't just reading the HOA covenant. I was diving deep into the digital rabbit hole of city ordinances, state vehicle codes, disability access laws. Hour after hour, I scrolled, clicked, and read, fueled by lukewarm coffee and a desperate hope. City ordinances on parking were vague, mostly focused on blocking fire hydrants and intersections. State laws about vehicle codes were similarly unhelpful in this specific situation. But then, I struck gold. A mention in a disability rights forum led me to the Fair Housing Act, FHA, and the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. I devoured the information, my heart pounding with a renewed sense of purpose. These federal laws mandated reasonable accommodations for people with disabilities. HOAs, it turned out, were not exempt. They were legally required to make exceptions to their rules to ensure equal access and opportunity. And there it was, the key. Blocking access to vital medical therapy for my autistic son wasn't just a violation of some ridiculous rule about blue paint. It was a potential violation of federal law. Carol's beige obsession had led her to step on a landmine. The next morning, a new energy coursed through me. The defeated slump in my shoulders was gone, replaced by a focused intensity. I opened a new document on my computer. The title, Operation Dinosaur Freedom. Step 1, Documentation. I contacted Dr. Sharma and explained the situation. She immediately understood the gravity of it and drafted a detailed letter, not just reiterating Leo's diagnosis, but meticulously outlining why the bus-based therapy was essential and could not be effectively replicated in a traditional clinic setting. She emphasized the specialized sensory integration equipment on board, the consistent and predictable environment of the mobile unit, and how crucial these factors were for Leo's progress. This wasn't just about convenience, it was about medical necessity. I sent this letter, along with copies of the FHA and ADA regulations I'd printed out, via certified mail to Stern, and Bottomley, and the entire HOA board, formally requesting a reasonable accommodation for Leo's therapy bus under federal law. Step 2. Proactive communication. This felt like walking a tightrope, but I knew it was crucial. I called the city police non-emergency line. My hands were slightly sweaty as I spoke, carefully choosing my words. Hi, my name is Alex Thompson, and I'm a resident at 123 Maple Street. I'm calling to give you a heads up about a potential issue that might require your attention tomorrow morning. My 6-year-old son, Leo, who has autism, receives vital in-home therapy via a specially equipped medical bus that comes to our curb. Our HOA president has been actively attempting to obstruct this vehicle, citing various community bylaws. However, under state statute, I'd done my research and found a real-sounding, relevant statute about obstructing public roadways. This is potentially illegal, as it would deny necessary medical access to a disabled minor. We have formally requested a reasonable accommodation under federal law, but we anticipate further obstruction. I am not asking you to take immediate action now. I am simply creating a record of a potential attempt to unlawfully deny medical access to a vulnerable individual. The therapy bus is scheduled to arrive tomorrow at 9 a.m. Thank you for your time. Step 3, preparation. This was where my project manager instincts truly kicked in. I assembled what I affectionately dubbed the Go Binder. Inside, meticulously organized in clear plastic sleeves, were copies of the highlighted FHA and ADA regulations. Dr. Sharma's detailed letter outlining medical necessity. My formal written request for reasonable accommodation sent to the HOA and their lawyers, along with proof of certified mailing. Printouts of the relevant state statute regarding obstruction of a public roadway. A detailed log of every interaction with Carol, including dates, times, and specific complaints. My phone, Fully charged and ready to record video at a moment's notice, I explained the plan to Sarah that evening. She was still anxious, her worry etched on her face. But she saw the determined glint in my eyes, the cold, logical precision of my strategy. I wasn't just a frustrated father anymore. I was a man with a plan, a meticulously crafted project designed to achieve one crucial objective: unimpeded access to therapy for my son. The morning of the showdown arrived, draped in an unnerving calm. I sipped my coffee, but the usual frantic gulping was replaced by a slow, deliberate savoring of the caffeine. The go-binder sat on the kitchen counter, a silent promise of preparedness. Leo, oblivious to the simmering suburban drama, was practically vibrating with anticipation. "Bus! Bus!" he chanted softly, his gaze fixed on the front window. His innocent excitement was a stark reminder of what this was all about. Then I saw her. Through the gap in the blinds, I spotted Carol across the street. She wasn't tending her roses today. Instead, she was dragging a bright yellow plastic lawn chair to the curb in front of our house. Beside it, she placed a large, insulated thermos, and with a flourish that could only be described as theatrical, a small smartphone tripod. She was setting up a blockade. She was going live. A grim smile touched my lips. "Bring it on, Captain Beige," I thought. "You have absolutely no idea what's coming." 8:59 a.m. The familiar rumble of the blue dinosaur bus echoed down the street. Leo's humming intensified. Carol sprang into action with the speed and agility of a particularly determined squirrel guarding its nuts. She backed her silver minivan out of her driveway and parked it directly in front of our house, effectively blocking the curb where the bus usually stopped. Then she emerged, planting herself firmly in front of her vehicle, arms crossed, her smartphone whirring as it started recording. Her performance had begun. Dave, the gentle, patient driver of the blue dinosaur bus, gave a polite little honk. Carol remained unmoved, a self-righteous sentinel in her beige cardigan. Then, she whipped out her own phone and dialed 911. Her voice, usually sharp and clipped, was now dripping with theatrical panic. "Yes, hello? I need to report a public safety hazard. There's a large, unauthorized commercial truck menacing our residential street. It's creating a dangerous obstruction. I'm a concerned citizen." The countdown began. Minute 1. 2 police cars arrived, sirens silent, lights flashing a silent warning. From the first car emerged Officer Miller, young, his uniform crisp, his expression serious, ready to take charge of what he probably assumed was a routine parking dispute. From the second car unfolded Sergeant Davis, older, his face etched with the weary wisdom of countless suburban squabbles. Carol immediately pivoted, launching into her performance for the officers, pointing dramatically at the bus, clutching her chest as if suffering a grave injustice, her voice rising in indignation as she spoke of plummeting property values and the blatant disregard for community rules. Officer Miller, looking slightly overwhelmed, started to walk towards Dave, the bus driver, presumably to tell him to move along. That was my cue. I stepped out of my house, the go-binder tucked firmly under my arm. I walked calmly, deliberately, not towards the frantic Carol, but towards the seasoned Sergeant Davis. "Officer," I said, my voice level and steady, "may I have a moment before you instruct the bus driver?" Sergeant Davis turned his gaze towards me, his expression unreadable. "What's this all about, sir?" "My name is Alex Thompson," I explained. "I believe you might have a note in your system from a call I made to the non-emergency line yesterday regarding a potential obstruction of a medical transport vehicle at this exact address." Sergeant Davis's eyebrow quirked almost imperceptibly. He reached for his radio microphone. "Dispatch, can you check if we have a prior call from a Mr. Thompson at 123 Maple Street regarding a potential obstruction?" A brief pause, filled with the chirping of birds and Carol's increasingly agitated protests in the background. Then, Sergeant Davis nodded slowly. "I see that here." The subtle shift in his demeanor was palpable. Carol's self-proclaimed emergency was no longer a surprise. It was a predicted event. The wind had shifted. Minute 2. I opened the go binder, laying it flat on the hood of Sergeant Davis's patrol car. I didn't even glance at Carol, who was now sputtering about bylaws and aesthetics to the increasingly bewildered Officer Miller. I pointed to the highlighted sections in the FHA and ADA documents. "This is a medical transport and therapy vehicle for my disabled son, Leo," I said, my voice calm and measured. "As per the Federal Fair Housing Act, we have formally requested a reasonable accommodation for this essential service, which the HOA, spearheaded by Miss Carol here, is illegally denying." I tapped the page. Furthermore, I flipped to another section in my binder. "Miss Carol is currently in violation of state statute," I recited the specific statute number, "by intentionally and unlawfully obstructing a public roadway." Officer Miller, looking increasingly uncomfortable, glanced back and forth between my meticulously organized binder and the still hysterical Carol. Sergeant Davis, however, looked like he was enjoying the show, a faint flicker of amusement in his eyes. He'd clearly dealt with his fair share of overzealous HOA presidents. Minute 3. Sergeant Davis had heard enough. He closed my binder with a decisive snap and turned his attention to Carol. His voice, when he spoke, was flat and devoid of any sympathy. "Ma'am," he said, his gaze unwavering, "you called us to the scene regarding a traffic obstruction. It appears the only obstruction here is your vehicle, which is preventing a legally operating medical transport from accessing a residence. You are currently illegally obstructing a public roadway. You have 60 seconds to move your vehicle and return to your property, or it will be towed at your expense, and you will be issued a citation for unlawful obstruction." Carol's face went through a truly remarkable transformation. Shock widened her eyes, followed by a flush of outrage that crept up her neck and bloomed across her cheeks. Her mouth opened and closed, but for a moment, no sound came out. Then, the sputtering began. But the bylaws, the community covenants, the aesthetics." Sergeant Davis held up a hand, cutting her off mid-rant. "Ma'am, this is a public street. Your HOA bylaws hold no legal weight here. Federal and state law supersede your community's regulations. Move your vehicle, now." He then turned to Officer Miller. "Miller, ensure the therapy bus has a clear and safe path to the curb." It was over. Checkmate. The police escort wasn't the dramatic, siren-blaring affair Carol had probably envisioned when she called 911. It was simply Officer Miller directing her minivan to be moved and ensuring the blue dinosaur bus could safely pull up to our curb. Humiliated, her live stream likely capturing her spectacular failure, Carol scrambled back into her minivan and sped into her garage, the automatic door slamming shut behind her like a final, defeated punctuation mark. The blue dinosaur bus, its bright colors a stark contrast to the now vanished silver minivan, pulled up to our curb. Dave, the bus driver, gave me a knowing thumbs up and a wide, grateful smile. Dr. Sharma's eyes held a mixture of relief and deep respect. I walked back towards my front door, where Leo was still watching, his face a mixture of confusion and unwavering trust. I knelt down, meeting his gaze. "Your bus is here, buddy," I said, my voice thick with emotion. His face broke into a radiant smile, and he ran towards the open door of the blue dinosaur, his dinosaur backpack bouncing against his back. Sarah met me on the porch, and we held each other in a long, exhausted, but utterly triumphant embrace. We watched the bus, no longer a symbol of conflict, but a vibrant beacon of hope, its blue dinosaur a silent guardian on our street. Just then, Gus's rumbling truck pulled up. He rolled down his window, a grin splitting his bearded face. He gestured towards the departing police car and the closed garage door across the street. Did I miss the party? I just laughed, the tension finally bleeding out of me. You wouldn't believe it, Gus. The aftermath was satisfying. Carol's ill-fated livestream had captured her entire meltdown, including Sergeant Davis's pointed instructions. The video, inevitably, went viral within the neighborhood's digital sphere. A special HOA meeting was called, one I attended armed with my Go binder and a newfound reputation as the man who took down the beige baroness. Several other neighbors, it turned out, had their own grievances against Carol's tyrannical reign. Armed with the knowledge of federal disability law and the sheer absurdity of Carol's actions now laid bare, the vote was swift and decisive. Carol was out. The new HOA president was a blessedly quiet, retired accountant named Arthur, who just wanted to ensure the community pool was adequately chlorinated. Life in Willow Creek Estates slowly returned to a semblance of normalcy, albeit a slightly less beige normalcy. The blue dinosaur bus became a familiar and welcome sight. Gus finished the sensory play structure, a colorful, textured wonderland that Leo adored. Months later, I was in the backyard, watching Leo happily swinging, his laughter echoing through the late afternoon sun. The blue dinosaur bus had just dropped him off, and he was chattering excitedly about his session. He looked at me, his eyes bright, and said a new word, a word he'd been working on with Dr. Sharma. "Go, Daddy, go." A wave of warmth washed over me. I pushed him gently on the swing. In that moment, surrounded by the sounds of my son's joy and the vibrant colors of his play area, I realized something profound. Sometimes, the most effective way to fight a monster isn't with brute force, but with meticulous planning, unwavering determination, and a surprisingly thorough understanding of federal law. Who knew? Project Dinosaur Freedom, definitively completed. And the best part? It only took 3 minutes.